Welcome back, everyone. Hope you've had a restful break. It's time to go back to our speeches and discussions. And now it's time to bring onto the stage the technology team. The technology team have been working very hard on making sure to discuss the ever-changing world of technology and what we as a society can do to adapt to it. With that being said, I'd like to bring on to the stage the speaker of the technology team, Rishit Chatterjee.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world is different. That may perhaps be the most accurate statement made about the condition of the world at any given time, because it becomes more different with every passing second. The changes are subtle, but they are there. The world when I begin saying this speech may seem the same as when I finish saying this speech, but in that short span of time, we've already taken several steps towards the future. But stark differences are not so apparent in the short time that I'm focusing on right now. So join me on a little journey to the height of a previous era, the Industrial Revolution. What was the brand new in thing, so to speak? Steam engines, newly available in trains, boats, and ships, water-powered spinning and weaving technologies like the spinning jenny, which on their own aren't very important, but lend credence to this concept of automation, something that seemed so impossibly innovative at the time. I mean, at the time we were using electricity, we were harnessing the fury of God to power our machines. It seemed as if the audacity and creativity of human innovation would have no end, would have no further increase in technological prowess. And yet we shift back to now and see a stunning change. When electricity was the black gold of the world and light bulbs were the most impressive innovations, and contrast that to now, when the same things are relegated to novices of electronics. I mean, anyone with an Arduino kit can turn a light bulb on and off. And powering anything by steam might be the hobby of a particularly dedicated historian, but that's besides the point. What caused this shift, ladies and gentlemen? At what time and what thought process did we decide to shift to the technological superiority we've adopted today? I'll give you a moment to think about it. This is your moment to think about it. That was your moment to think about it. You've all had some answers in your head, or some inkling of an answer, or some thought process that you've started on to lead to some answer that's actually probably going to be correct. All of you are correct from some respect, but I can't extract everybody's answer in this one speech, and to assume one single answer would be a disservice to everyone else's answer. Therefore, I'm going to take everyone's answer under a single umbrella blanket statement. Circumstances in the present made people realize that their imaginations would lead them to the future. After the world wars that jump-started the information era, the imagination and creativity of human innovation extended beyond conventional ideas and means. We realized the future isn't some long-awaited stage that will come into existence at the end of our lives or even after we die. It's being created right here and right now. And the future is merely the stage of time we attribute to achieve sufficient technological progress to alter our lives significantly. For example, even when we decided that steamboats and steam engines might be the in thing, there was definitely scope to do more. When we realized that the future isn't to be waited for, it's to be created, that, ladies and gentlemen, is when technology began reaching the apex as it does today. Today, we've moved beyond anything someone from 100 years ago could even begin to comprehend. Today, the issue isn't what we can make, because our past as a race has shown us that we can do anything, make anything. We've experienced hardship and war that resulted out of a culmination of fear from too much military buildup. After seeing how much anarchy could happen, we used it as a catalyst to jumpstart innovation, to improve our own lives. After seeing how bad life could be, we used it as motivation to jumpstart development in every single sector. And we did. We started developing every sector until we tackled the beating heart of the human race, health. We decided that bad health and poor conditions, they're unacceptable for our supreme species. No one should be living in fear of having their life cut short so quickly. And so we decided to adapt our technology for use in the medical sector. We looked the Grim Reaper straight in the face, spat in his eyes, and snapped his scythe in half with the complete abandonment of the medical industry. Technology allowed us to keep failed hearts beating and dying livers passing. And yet, this power to preserve life, to prolong life, gave us this superiority, this arrogance to believe that we could create life of our own imagining. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you've heard of this concept of artificial intelligence. It's something that resulted out of humanity's collective God complex. We've advanced beyond solving fundamental problems in living and addressing some things as impossible. Nothing is impossible anymore, ladies and gentlemen. We merely haven't developed the technology to implement our proposed solutions to it yet. AI? We've only reached low-level AI sentience. Alexa, Siri, Google, Cortana, whatever virtual assistants that we have and assume to be artificial intelligence are at best virtual intelligences. And yet we still assume that we will end up creating a fully autonomous, sentient artificial intelligence. The question about such AIs isn't, can we do it? Because we're humans, we can do anything. Is it ethical to put them in a position of keeping our society running? We've assumed that they will take low-level employment and push low-income people out of life and service. We've begun to wonder, are they truly safe to employ in certain sectors? Will their automated intelligences, something that we will code to perfectly mimic sentience, be truly beneficial in the long run? We've seen disappointing results of bias, of discrimination in algorithms, particularly in medical informatics, as well as in AI-manipulated stocks and finances. Let me give you the example of Compass, Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions, a system that decides whether you're more likely to commit a crime based on your racial peers' actions and your economic peers' actions. Sounds awfully racist to me. Now, are these AIs truly beneficial to us in the long run? Or will they continue to lead to what current virtual intelligences are doing? Except this time, with sufficiently advanced AIs, these actions will be purposefully done by a pseudo-brain dictating actual instructions out of its own volition. The issue of bias and discrimination in informatics leads me to the topic of information itself. Technology has advanced to such a point that the management and creation of overt physical structures, it's approaching obsolescence. Information is a currency now. And every person in existence within the online system that encompasses everything has some manner of information to trade, to barter, to give to someone else to manage. We've created a whole sector that someone from even 30 years ago would have trouble comprehending solely based on the management and understanding of large amounts of data. Big data. With such an exponentially increasing field, since everyone generates more information every second, it raises the question of how big is too big? When will big data become too big? With the sheer volume of data being passed every second, as well as its innumerable applications, it's going to launch 1,000 questions that I'm sure the panelists will broach after me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I come to the conclusion of my speech, I suppose what I'm trying to say is the world of today is very different as compared to the world of yesterday. Catalysts in altering the human thought process have sharpened our focus on the future to a razor edge. Technology now knows applications in every sector and has ranged from destruction to creation. The questions we propose to it aren't, can we do it? Because, again, we're humans. We can do anything. It's, should we do it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rishit, for your wonderful insights on technology of today. With that being said, I'd like to bring onto the stage the panelists of the technology team, starting from Ajay Kumar, Ishita Trivedi, Nanaki Singh, and Ravleen Kaur. Thank you very much.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your speech. I think you put it all wonderfully. I think what we should really do is start off by looking at AI quite objectively as, what it really is. So AI is basically a branch of computer science which aims to simulate the human brain. We are essentially trying to create a technological bot that operates, that thinks, that can really do processes like a human brain can, like we can. So I think we should really get started with our discussion of AI from there.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at AI from the history of it and how it's been developing. So there's this idea called Moore's law. which is that every year the size of a transistor, which is a component in a computer, decreases by about 2 millimeters. So if we apply this logic, the idea is that every year our computational power gradually increases. And when this happens, the idea is, are we going to reach the level of such attainment in technology that we'll be able to do anything we like, or will it just simply plateau? And I think that's definitely something worth looking forward to in the future.
I think the problem with AI is that people have this big question mark around it. Is it worth it? Is it putting people out of jobs? We really have to look at it. And one example is Amazon. So the Amazon warehouse uses Kiva systems. They're basically robots that took over human factory jobs. Now, they did go ahead to create more jobs as well, because now there are more jobs in AI. But now those low-skilled workers don't have their jobs that were vital. And you really start to think that because someone doesn't have an education, they don't have a job anymore, and the people who do have an education have a job. So there's this question mark that never leaves our mind about it. Like, who are we trying to save here? People who have jobs because of these systems, or are we like feeling sympathetic for those who don't have their jobs?
And like any other thing that comes into this world, it has an economic impact, and obviously so does AI. So here are a few stats that I present to you, which very obviously represent what impact AI has had on the economy. So AI has the potential to incrementally add 16%, or in rough words, around $30 million by 2030 to the current global outlook. And also, our research shows that 45% of total economic gains will come from product enhancement and stimulating consumer demand that happens because of AI. However, AI also adds to like significant disruptions for the economy, and this is because there are considerable costs that are associated with managing labor transition, especially for workers being left behind by AI. Which was also what my other panelists talked about, which could reduce the gross impact of AI by around 10%.
So, whilst we talk about AI, I think it is important to talk about, the cons of AI. And I think what we really should get at is bias and discrimination. And you mentioned it in your speech as well, that it is such a big contributing factor into how successful an AI bot can be in helping us in our day-to-day lives. And now there are a couple of types of biases that we should look at. The first being, cognitive biases. Just generally what is a part of our human brain. It is ingrained in us naturally. And what I really should, I think, get onto first is that AI runs on data. It exists because we are feeding a computer model millions and millions of data points to teach it to recognize patterns and understand how the world works. That's essentially what we're trying to do. Now, what problem I think we get from this quite evidently is the quality of data. We can, let's say if we teach a robot to interpret speech, we can feed hundreds and hundreds of, let's say, voice memo points into that and expect it to learn. But it all comes down to how good the quality of data is, or what forms of data is, or really what types of data it represents. So from that, we get this issue of underrepresentation, which I think is such a big point now that, we try to form this inclusive society, but in AI and technology, we aren't able to reach every part of human life. And I just want to bring your attention to a very vital case study, which, and it was a study that took place in Boston in which Black Americans didn't receive the same level of care and the same level of access to medical care because of their color, because of the lack of data. So I think what we can all, at least what we've all heard, is that white Americans have access to better quality of better quality of healthcare, more healthcare, and what that essentially becomes is more data points. So when we're training a model, we're training it, to work in some healthcare environment, we get a lot of representation from a white population. But Black Americans who don't have that access, who are poorer, who lack the ability to access medical treatment, they don't form data points. So when we're creating a model, there's a lack of representation from minority groups, Black Americans in America. So what actually happened was Black Americans were denied kidney transplants because of their race, because there wasn't enough representation to teach a robot to sort of understand that, okay, there is another form of human or of a different race. And you know, if we want to make AI the future, if we want it to represent the entire society, that is something that is a big concern. We need to definitely address the issue of underrepresentation in society, of data points.
And let's be honest, like most of us have access to Siri, we have access to Alexa, and how often do you notice that many of the accents and assistants that are used by Siri or Alexa, how often do you notice that they're not American or not British? It is so rare. None of the apps that I use have Indian or African or Hispanic accents. So then how can we help, how can we make sure that AI will prevent the discrimination of different, like, you know, societies and ethics in its functioning?
I think, like, talking about what you're saying, I think it's all deep-rooted. It's all from the person itself. I think what happens is that because like discrimination is rooted into us, it's embedded into us. It's not something that it's not AI's fault. We've developed this technology and we've done it. We're the ones who've put it in, we've embedded it into it. So like Rishit mentioned in his speech, he talked about how there are some people who are at a disadvantage in judicial systems in America. So American judicial systems actually have developed technology to see which people are more likely to become a convict. So there's this technology shows that African Americans are 2 times more likely to be detected as a convict or a possible convict. And I think it's because us as humans, we have this racism that's like embedded into us. It's all around us. And because it's in us, we translate that into the technology that we produce and the technology that we use. And that's again like the data points that you were mentioning. And I think to actually be able to reduce it in AI, it would have to be that we have to start reducing it in ourselves before we can even try to reduce it in AI.
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to bring up one more point. Such systems exist that are used in the judicial system, in the healthcare system, in so many industries, and they exist. They are in use. So who do we really blame? Do we blame an AI, or do we blame the people who are developing the AI?
It's we who develop AI, so we cannot blame AI because it's us who make sure that whatever AI is doing is part of our action and part of what we do in our everyday life. So whatever we do is inculcated in AI. It's definitely us to blame, for sure.
I mean, if I could butt in here, AI, we've defined AI as something that it's independent life that we create, that the actual true definition of artificial intelligence, like while it's very like underdeveloped right now, the future that we expect where AI could be doing wrong, could be behind most of the societal wrongs that we're tackling, it's made of its own volition. It's made of data that it's seen on its own and made on the pseudo-brain that it's been given. So wouldn't it be the AI's fault in itself because it's its own sentient entity?
I think it's really important to point out here that we need to take a step back here and understand how this technology could develop in the future. So if we look at the history so far of humankind, we've noticed that there have been certain points of inflection where there have been drastic improvements in the living conditions and the quality of life, and we attribute that to the technology. So if we look at the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and I think in the coming years we're definitely going to see another revolution wherein technology will reach new heights, and I think it's important that we, as the custodians of the future, we have to keep an eye out for that and make sure that we do it in a responsible and ethical and sustainable way.
Yeah. You mentioned Moore's law a while ago, where every year I guess the amount of data that we can use multiplies by 2. So, you, Rishit, you mentioned supercomputers and super AI, which basically is a human replica in computer form. Do you think it is possible with we're sort of hitting that limit where we can't really, our computational power is really decreasing. So is it possible, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, as Ajay said, that we're heading towards another sort of technological revolution. So even though our computational power might decrease or we might enter into a plateau, the future is unpredictable. We could have some humongous spike in our technological levels that say that, oh wow, now we can create super AIs, and it's well within our realm of possibility. Like if we can make sci-fi about it now, in 20 years we could probably make it in real life.
Yeah, just to end it off, I wanted to bring a little bit of attention to big data and the problems with it. There's so much, we're advancing so much at such a fast rate, and big data is it's everywhere now. It's more than we realize, and it's not a very common topic. I think it's more about the fact that big data is taking over our lives, and for anyone who doesn't know what big data is, it's just volatile information which has a fast velocity, and it's about how there are some unethical practices that go on with big data, and there's this huge opportunity cost of when you can be investing this money into health infrastructure, why are we investing it into big data? But big data does contribute to health informatics and using data to help people in the healthcare industry.
And before we go, we'd like to leave you all with a question. Do you think that we can inculcate human values in AI? Do you think it is possible for AI to ever have empathy, compassion, and sympathy for its users or for any of the information that it provides us with?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, the technology speaker and panel.